and this is where the sock was found. This is an overhead view of the house. You can see it. Here's the house.
3-4 houses down the alley.
Yeah, about 4 houses down. Here's where the sock is found. And it's got Devon and Damon's blood on it. And this is Darin's sock. Beautiful homes, man.
Oh,
look at this.
This has got to be it on your side right here.
Yeah, there it is, right on the left. It's all lit up.
That's it right there.
Yep.
The sock was found in this alleyway.
This is high-end district here. There's some alarms, lights, yeah, motion detectors and things. You know, I think lights would be popping on and off here. You know, Reggie, this is the thing that gets me. Why does this sock get attached to this murderer and dropped here in this alley?
And where do you go from here if you're not from this neighborhood? This house, where it's at, the way it's secluded, it don't fit the other side of they ran through the back, out the alleyway, the sock, it just doesn't fit.
Any bad guy will tell you, they're always looking for a way out, you know? They don't want to be cornered. And you back here, you would get cornered. Right near the carotid artery.
Darlie Routier had no criminal record. In fact, up to this point, she never had much involvement with the police, aside from watching Law & Order. Could she really be the kind of person who would kill her own children and then slash her own throat? The 911 call seemed like it should have been a critical part of Darlie's defense.
I mean, you listen to the call, it sounds like a legit call. I mean, you could hear a real frantic woman. Her emotions are really running high.
Toby Shook, who prosecuted Darlie, never bought into the 911 call. To him, it was all an act, a desperate woman who resorted to desperate measures to get what she wanted.
I think what got the investigators' attention first, a very low-crime neighborhood, no violent crimes occurs in the neighborhood, and it's obvious in this crime that the object of the attack were the boys. These were devastating wounds, penetrating knife wounds that went through their entire bodies. Darlie Routier had a superficial wound to her neck and one to her arm. 2 days after she was released from the hospital, she came to the police station. This would be about 4 or 5 days after the murder, and showed up with these massive bruises on the inside of her arms.
How many days later?
She showed up 2 days after being released from the hospital. I believe she realized the police weren't believing her story. We showed all those bruises to the nurses who attended her and the physicians that attended her. They said that these bruises weren't there. My argument, and maintained also, is that if this is supposed to be some guy who's in there who wants to kill Darlie Routier, and he's hitting her so hard that he's calling these massive bruises on the inside of her arms, how come he didn't smash her in the face? You know, how come he didn't bust her in the nose, in the mouth? She can identify. Why do you leave her alive? So she can identify. But of course, Darlie got amnesia. He's the luckiest killer in the world. The witness who can put you on death row, she gets amnesia and can't remember anything about you.
I agree with you. I mean, there's somebody breaking and killing 2 kids and she's left with a cut. Why isn't she finished off?
Right. It just didn't make sense. And her story just wasn't adding up. No stranger would come in the house that way. It's very illogical. You know, he said, first of all, we look at, it's a very low crime area. These kinds of killings don't happen. Secondly, this neighborhood is hard to get in and get out of. If you're going to commit a crime like this especially, or even a burglary, you want some easy access. You had to kind of wander around through the neighborhood.
Yeah, Andrea Yates, that was in Texas, correct? Where she drowned her children. And they attribute that something to postpartum depression. Did you ever think of that in these terms at all?
No psychotic. There was no evidence she was suffering from anything. Andrea Yates had a long psychological history and was hearing voices. This is a killing that you have, and then you want to cover the crime up.
I know you're not a doctor, but how would you sum up her behavior? In describing her, how would you describe her as a person?
She's a psychopath.
I got to tell you, this is some hell of a bruise, isn't it? How did you hold somebody down?
I don't know.
And create a bruise like that?
It looked like a truck ran over her.
This guy was holding her down. She had to be struggling to create bruises like this because they run from here down to the wrist.
We only got circumstantial evidence. You got no witness statements. But his circumstantial evidence and the way he explained it makes it look very bad for Darlie.
A close friend of Darlie's testified that she had become depressed after the birth of her 3rd son. and had even threatened to commit suicide. And several other people told us that Darlie and Darin had been having problems, including arguments about money. Keeping up with the Joneses was tearing them apart.
There's a lot of evidence here. I mean, you know, I just don't buy the bloody sock 75 yards away found in the alley. I don't buy the intruder. You know, guys come in, what do they do? Well, you know, one or two, whoever it was, comes in and kills two kids like that, and she gets slashed. How come they don't kill her?
5 weeks into our investigation, Reggie and I had completely changed our opinion of Darlie. We began thinking more and more that she was where she belonged, behind bars. But we'd soon come across evidence that would take everything we'd learned about this case so far and turn it on its head.
Somebody came into my home and murdered my children and me. Dad,
no,
somebody
you left
does
your
not
children for dead.
Double Exposure premieres next Friday at 10 on Court TV.
Look at that blank stare, man.
At this point in our investigation, we had learned a lot about Darlie Routier. We knew that at the time of the murder, she and her husband Darin had been fighting about money.
Was it the mom, Darlie? Even though she sustained some wounds right near the carotid artery. Supposedly missed it by a few millimeters.
A few days after they were murdered, 5-year-old Damon and 6-year-old Devon were laid to rest.
Devon and Damon, yep. Devon, Damon, little kids.
It's a cemetery in West Haven Memorial Park. The final resting place of those small little boys.
Devon and Damon, man. One of the most vicious murders in Texas.
In our time,
right in the
Texas.
country. 8 days before his birthday.
Just days after the burials, a local news station broadcast footage of Darlie at the gravesite. The prosecution used the tape as proof that Darlie was a sinister monster, out of control and out of touch with reality. But Darlie's mother and sister say the tape was taken completely out of context. We met them at their home in Plano, Texas, 2 towns over from where the murders took place.
The big story about this is the silly string. That was your idea for the silly string?
Oh, yeah.
You're the one that bought that and brought that there? And
You can tell us about it.
It was the most ridiculous thing. You know, Devon was fixing to be 7. We were having a birthday party for him. He was so excited. And then all this happened. You know, his friends had gone out and bought gifts, and then we had to explain to his friends and the neighborhood children that someone had come in and killed them. And, I mean, how do you explain that to little children? You know, little children don't understand the grieving process like adults. They don't understand death and, you know, these horrible things that happen.
so there were children there that day, in addition to yourselves.
We had a prayer service
We planned
first.
a prayer service, and then we planned to be there at the gravesite that evening so all the kids could come. And since obviously we weren't going to have the party, it was just a way for us to all gather and to be together and to feel close and comfort. And it wasn't a celebration of their death. Oh, yay, they're dead, woohoo. It was, it's their birthday, you know?
See, that's the thing that was looked at, examined by so many people. People said it was wrong, it was inappropriate.
And it was so ridiculous. They sat there and they watched that tape over and over and over again.
Who watched it?
The jurors.
The jurors.
They didn't watch anything but the silly string part.
So you blame...
I was never allowed to testify. Nobody ever asked me a single question about that.
That's too bad.
So Darlie sits in death row because of silly string and overzealous prosecutors and bad police work.
She was wonderful. She really was, and it's very lonely without her.
She's walking around with a lot of guilt. She really feels that she put her sister on death row with that Silly Stream incident.
It meant so much to the jurors that they watched it so many times during the conviction of Darlie. And if it would have been explained the way she did, I think they would have seen it in a lot different way.
Later that evening, we met with Tom Hollinshead, a retired DEA agent. Troubled by what took place at Darlie's trial, he spent the past few years taking a look at the case for himself. He agreed that a 20-second tape of a woman shooting silly string was the final blow that convicted Darlie Routier.